Which third signature shoe is better to hoop in? The Adidas DON Issue 3 or the Nike Zoom Freak 3? Today we're putting the most recent models from Donovan Mitchell and Giannis Antetokounmpo's shoe lines head to head to see how they compare. But really quick, if this is your first time checking us out, feel free to drop a follow or subscribe wherever you're watching and give this video a like. We would greatly appreciate that. So starting off with the box and the price, the Don 3s are going to get a spider logo kind of blown up in the middle of his box since Donovan's nickname is Spider Mitchell. And then switching it over, the Zoom Freak 3s are going to come in an orange box with Giannis's player logo kind of off-centered in that bottom corner. And as for pricing, the Don 3s are going to be on the much cheaper side for a signature basketball shoe, retailing for only $110. And the Zoom Freak 3s are going to be right along there with them, just above that at $120. So two of the cheaper models as far as signature shoe goes on the market right now. So doing a quick rundown for the appearance on these shoes and starting off with the colorways. Today we're checking out the Adidas DON Issue 3 in this Louisville Cardinals colorway versus the Zoom Freak 3 in this Nike color scheme. So looking at the Don 3s first, this is the college edition for his shoe. Donovan, of course, attended Louisville before being drafted to the Utah Jazz, but it's definitely not a look for this year's model, and they did switch some things up. So you can have a little bit more of a crown design kind of running up the midsole, which I think looks pretty nice. And they replaced the Adidas logo on the tongue with like more of like a spider design. I think that looks a lot better just compared to what they had going on last year. And you're going to get some Louisville branding on that band that kind of runs across the laces. And different colorways get different spots in that, or get different like markings there. But they did take away the wavy heel design from the Don 2s. And now these have more of a patch back there. I honestly prefer the look for the Don 2s in that heel section, but it is still a pretty nice setup. And now switching it over to the Zoom Freak 3s, Nike did add the strap to this year's model, which wasn't there on the 2s. And that's going to give these a really nice added touch. I mean, they even threw his nickname on there on the inside part of it. So I just think the strap's always a really nice feature to add because it does open up some pretty creative options in my opinion. But that's really like the one piece that they switched up that I did like compared to last year's model. I mean, the reverse swoosh, it just looks a little bit too small. It's going to be kind of tough for them to replicate what they did on his first shoe, which looked really clean. It was one of my favorite designs for a start to a shoe line. But the midsole setup is also going to be a little bit funky with the curves in my opinion. But you do get some Nike text on the tongue to kind of reference the colorway, so definitely not a bad look. But now let's go ahead and see how each of these shoes hold up on the court. So getting into more of the materials and the performance side for these shoes, and starting off with the cushioning on the Don Issue 3s, these are going to come with a light strike setup that I think is an improvement compared to the balance that was used in the Don 2s. This year's model does play a little bit softer, so I did like that. And it is going to be pretty balanced from front to back. I wouldn't say it's going to be anything too special though. I mean, it's still not going to be lacking, but overall the impact protection, it does feel pretty nice. The insole just isn't very soft, so I would expect a little bit of break-in time here. But switching it over to the Zoom Freak 3s, they also made some improvements in the comfort from last year's Zoom Freak 2. The front half of the shoe is going to be hollowed out, and that's going to be where you have two Zoom Air units. That's going to account for most of your soft feel. You don't get a lot of cushioning in the back half of the shoe. That's honestly not a huge deal because a lot of the time is spent playing on like the balls or like on your toes or your feet anyways, so not a huge deal. But the forefoot, these are going to feel a lot better to play in. I'd say a little bit more so than the Don 3s. So I do like the cushioning a little bit more on the Zoom Freaks. The Don 3s feel a little bit more balanced front to back though. For materials and support, you're going to get mostly textiles covering the Don Issue 3s with some TPU overlays in a few different places. And the upper has some holes built in to allow your foot to breathe, which is really nice. Just overall, this shoe does help keep it on the lighter side, just thanks to all the materials involved. And the support isn't a bad aspect on these either. I mean, you are going to have a crown logo just kind of built into that midsole that's going to play a role in keeping your foot just within the model so it doesn't slide out. So the lateral containment is pretty solid on these. And the upper doesn't move on any step backs or cuts, so that support really wasn't a problem for me. It's just not going to be quite as nice as the Don Issue 2s in my opinion. I mean, you did have a more noticeable heel counter to kind of keep your foot in there. And then also the upper was, a little bit more firm. The materials were a little more sturdy, but, along with that, I just don't think that model was as comfortable. So, something had to give. But like I said, the Don 3 still does stack up pretty solid for these categories. And I haven't specifically struggled in these as far as like support goes, but some people have cited, heel slippage or just kind of trouble locking your foot down. I just haven't had that issue, so I can't really speak on it. But now looking at the Zoom Freak 3s, Nike did add the strap to this year's line for Giannis' shoe. It's the first time it's shown up here, but other than that, I mean, the materials, they still hold up pretty well. The upper is really light, and the ventilation is going to be good for your foot too, especially in the toe box region. But I will say the support does feel a little bit less impressive on this model because of just like, that toe toe box region. And I guess they do kind of have that in common with the Don 3s compared to the Don 2s. You know, both models were probably better for support on their second shoe than each one is here on this third model. But the materials aren't going to give you, you know, the most secure feel. It can move around a little bit on the like harder movements, but more specifically just the toe box region, like I was saying. I mean, everything else there kind of checks out. You're also going to have that strap on there for some additional lockdown. Then you also get an outrigger as well. So the outrigger is going to be there to kind of brace your foot, just kind of keep your foot from like sliding outside of the shoe. And it also gives you a wider base for balance. And the midsole is going to have that wave kind of built into the backside of the shoe around the heel. And that is going to act as a heel counter to kind of keep your foot secure. So I wouldn't say the support is bad on these, just not as good as they have been in the past. But both of these models are going to range on the lighter side, which is really nice. The Don Issue 3 is going to weigh 408 grams for a size 10.5, which definitely is not bad. It's on the much lighter side. And the Zoom Freak 3s are going to be right there with them, actually even a little bit lighter at 404 grams for a size 10.5 as well. So that is a part that I like about these shoes. To finish off with traction, the Don 3s have a similar look to last year's model, just as far as the pattern goes, and they aren't bad, but I still would say they aren't great either. They do have a little bit of grip on the floor, but you know, nothing too over the top. These have played sort of inconsistent for me, but you know, I'm not sold on the design as a whole, but the rubber is pretty durable just from what I've noticed, so it wouldn't be a bad option if you want to use these outdoors. Then now looking at the Zoom Freak 3s, they did fix a few of the inconsistencies from last year's model, but it still didn't go away altogether. I am pretty, you know, tough on these computer generated designs just because they don't perform the best for me whenever I play in them, it feels like. I think there is still some room for improvement on the Zoom Freak 3 just as far as traction goes. I haven't been super impressed with this traction line on Giannis's last few models, but they are slowly improving, and you know, honestly, so is Donovan's line. But, you know, to finish off with sizing, I did go true to size on both of these models. That worked out perfect for me. The length is pretty good, and I would say these models maybe run on the narrow side. They're going to range on that side a little bit more so than being on the wider side, so just keep that in mind. So for the final ratings and starting off with the appearance, if I'm being honest, I did like the look for both of these second models better than I like the third models that we have here. So I'm just going to keep this section as a tie. For cushioning, both of the models got better, but the Don 3s, they just have a more balanced cushioning setup like I said, but the Zoom Freak 3s, they feel softer overall. So I'm going to give a slight edge to the Zoom Freak 3s here. For materials, both of these models stack up pretty similar here too. I mean, there's nothing too premium on either design, so I'm going to keep that section as a tie. But as for the support, that's a spot that these models did maybe take a small step back just from their previous two designs, but the Zoom Freak 3 still give you a strap for some additional lockdown. You're also going to have a noticeable outrigger to kind of help fight against that, you know, toe box region, which isn't really a big deal anyway, so I'm going to go with the Zoom Freak 3s here. Then to finish off with traction, I'm going to come back and keep this section as a tie. I mean, neither shoe really excels here. Both are decent, but I mean, not a shining point on either model. But I am actually going to go with the Nike Zoom Freak 3 as the better third signature shoe to hoop in. This is a pretty tough one. Like, these are really comparable models in a lot of ways. Like, in the areas that the Zoom Freak 3s win, it's definitely not by a lot. It's just by like a slight edge. But for the lower side of the scale, as for pricing, both of these models are really good options to play in. I just lean slightly towards the Zoom Freak 3s over the Don Issue 3s. Thank you for taking some time to watch. If you want to buy the Nike Zoom Freak 3, just click the link on screen or check out the links down below or in our bio for both shoes. Feel free to check that out. But until next review, I'm Landon from Shoe Wear. Peace.